They say every neighborhood has that person, the one who thinks the rules are for everybody else, but not for them. In Redwood Crest, that was Cara Milton. No question. She didn't care about landscaping or HOA meetings. She just acted like my driveway, my mailbox, even my brand new EV charger all belonged to her version of community. And I mean, the first time I caught her SUV leaching power from my charger, I thought, maybe it's an accident, right? The second time, though, that's when I realized I wasn't just dealing with a pushy neighbor. This was war, and she didn't even know who she'd picked it with. See, I work in cybersecurity. I build traps for a living, the kind you never see coming until it's too late. So while Cara thought she was stealing a little free electricity, what she really did was trigger a chain reaction that would rip the whole HOA apart from the inside. But let me back up a sec, because you gotta picture this. It all started after a killer 14-hour day at work. I rolled into my driveway, ready to do nothing except pour a bourbon and enjoy a little peace. Except instead of peace, there's this white SUV, not my wife Lena's usual spot, but Cara's, parked right in my driveway, plugged into my charger like it belonged to her. For a second, I thought my brain was fried from too much screen time. But no, the cable's hooked up to her car, clear as day. Now, Redwood Crest is the kind of place where people lose sleep over lawn heights or mailbox colors. But nobody steals, not outright. So, I walked over and, in my best polite neighbor voice, said, "Excuse me, I think your SUV's using my charger." Cara looked me dead in the eye, never missed a beat, hand still clutching her big pink flamingo. Saccharine smile, and just said, "Well, someone has to contribute to green infrastructure. We're all doing our part, right?" You know what I mean? The way she said it, I knew it wasn't gratitude. It was entitlement. I tried to be direct. "I need it for my own car, early meeting." She sighed, made a big show of unhooking her car, and peeled out, left a black tire mark just to make her point. There's Cara's SUV again, blocking me in, charger cable locked tight. Lena's eyes about popped out of her head. I stormed across the street, pounded on Cara's door, but her husband Ben answered. Just that, "It's not a big deal" shrug. "You could have asked nicely." Right. That's when I knew. It wasn't about ignorance. It was about power. Cara figured nobody would stand up to her. From the HOA, one for our navy blue front door, supposedly not in approved color, and one for our dark green hose reel. Fines threatened, 14 days to comply. We both knew who was behind it. System. I spent that night with the full set of HOA covenants. 300 pages of fine print nobody reads, but lawyers. By morning, I had a spreadsheet with violations for half the houses in the neighborhood. Basketball hoops, mailbox paint, driveways too wide or too close to property lines. Even Cara's new driveway extension was illegal as hell. Next HOA meeting, I rolled in with all my car front and center, notepad at the ready. I stood up, called out the selective enforcement, showed my evidence. Roderick just smiled and said, "Violations are violations." But when I presented proof that half the board was violating the very rules they tried to fine us for, you could feel the tide start to turn. Here's the twist. George, the neighbor everyone thinks is just an old guy obsessed. Rose beds, violating county runoff codes. He filed the complaint like a pro. Within a week, county inspectors were tearing up Cara's illegal driveway, and it made the local paper front page. HOA tyrant brought down by her own tricks. Cara tried everything after that. Fake violation letters, setting up a shadow HOA with signs and barricades, even a fake security checkpoint in front of her house. But every time, I was there, exposing her fraud, filing reports, rallying neighbors. The community finally woke up. At the next committee meeting, George chaired, neighbors rewrote the bylaws to make them fair, and Cara, she sat in the back, powerless, gripping her notepad like it was the last life raft on a sinking ship. But even then, she didn't quit. Started forging signatures, mailing out fake fines, trying to scare folks into compliance. This time, the neighborhood wasn't having it. We called her out publicly, reported her to the county's fraud division, and made sure everyone knew her notices were worthless. The tide had turned, finally. The best part? Watching Cara's empire crumble. The county forced her to rip up that driveway extension. Cost her thousands. The HOA, rebuilt from the ground up by the same people she'd bullied. That navy blue door of mine, still standing, a badge of victory. George's garden gnome, right where it belongs, winking at anyone who thinks they can push us around. But you know, Kara never really disappeared. She just went silent, lurking behind curtains, plotting her next move. And that's the real lesson. These battles never really end. There's always another Kara, another petty tyrant trying to game the system. What matters is standing your ground, building community, and refusing to be bullied by someone who thinks rules are for other people. So here's my question. Have you ever dealt with a Kara in your life? Drop a comment, tell me your story, tell me where you're watching from. And if you want to see more real-life neighborhood dramas, hit subscribe. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the fight for respect, for boundaries, for basic decency, isn't just my story. It's all of ours. Thing is, you'd think after all that, after the driveway got torn up, after the HOA meetings where people actually cheered instead of stared at their shoes, after neighbors finally started waving at me instead of crossing the street, it'd be over, right? Like, justice done, cue the credits, everybody learns a little something and moves on with their lives. But if you've ever tangled with someone like Kara, you know better. People like her don't just slink away. They don't accept defeat. They plot. They stew. They look for that one little crack in your armor. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. It started with a kind of weird, fake peace. Days went by where nothing happened. No new violation letters. No posts in the Facebook group. Not even a sighting of her white SUV in my driveway. Lena said maybe we could actually have a normal weekend. And for half a second, I almost believed her. But then neighbors started showing up at my door, some clutching cream-colored envelopes, some looking like they'd just seen a ghost. Inside, new violation notices. Not just for me, not just for George with his gnome, everybody got one. Basketball hoops, pergolas, flagpoles, porch lights, you name it. Every tiny thing suddenly a crime. Only this time, the board hadn't sent them. The signatures were forged, the letterhead copied from old documents. Kara was impersonating the HOA, trying to terrify the whole block back into line. Honestly, I almost had to laugh. She'd gone full supervillain. But you know what fear does to a community that's been bullied for years? People froze. Even after all the meetings, all the changes, one forged letter and half the neighborhood was ready to start repainting doors and tearing down playsets. That's how deep this kind of intimidation runs. Lena caught me pacing one night, sorting the stack of fake violations. She said, "You can't let her get away with this. People need to see. She's just bluffing." And I knew she was right. So, I did what I do best. I went to work, collected every fake letter, scanned them, matched signatures, lined up the old official forms beside Kara's counterfeits. I wrote up a simple, blunt memo to the neighborhood. These notices are not from the HOA. They are fraudulent. The board has not issued any new violations, and county authorities have been notified. And then, just like before, Lena and I walked the neighborhood, tucked the memos in every mailbox, face to face with folks who were finally ready to fight back. That night, the Facebook group exploded. People furious, not at each other for once, but at Kara. Calls for real legal action. Suggestions for a restraining order. Someone even offered to set up security cameras for the entire block, just to keep an eye on her. But it was George who delivered the knockout punch. He showed up with a copy of the county fraud report he'd filed, along with evidence that would have made a prosecutor proud. Next thing you know, Kara gets a certified letter from my attorney, cease and desist, with a not-so-subtle warning that mail fraud is a felony. For a day or two, the whole neighborhood seemed to breathe easier. You could feel the tension let up, like the air finally cleared after a thunderstorm. And yet, I'd be lying if I said I slept easy. Kara's house stayed dark, curtains drawn, but every so often I'd spot her car idling at the end of the street, just watching. Some nights, I'd catch her out there, pacing, notebook in hand, scribbling. God knows what. It was like she couldn't help herself. The need to control, to punish, it just kept gnawing at her. Lena called it obsession. I called it unfinished business. And then, just when things seemed almost boring, Redwood Crest woke up to something straight out of a satire. Metal posts appeared overnight at the entrances to the block, giant reflective signs reading, "Neighborhood Security Checkpoint, authorized by concerned residents." A prefab security booth parked right at the end of Willow Lane, all lit up with spotlights, cameras, the whole 9 yards. Kara had gone rogue, building her own fake HOA. If it weren't so maddening, it would have been funny. The fear came rushing right back. People stop me on my walks. Is this legal? Do we have to stop and show ID to get to our own homes? You could see the panic in their faces, parents holding their kids back, older folks refusing to walk the dog after dark. I told them what I'd always told them. No, it's not legal, and no, she can't enforce anything. But that doesn't mean she won't try. So we called a meeting, this time in George's living room, packed so tight people stood in the hallway. My attorney Rachel joined in on speakerphone. She laid it out plain. What Kara's done is not only unauthorized, it's criminal. Public easement, county law, all of it. But paperwork takes time, and fear works fast. I said, let's make it public. County, local press, everybody. Shine a light so bright she can't hide. That weekend, we hosted a town hall in the clubhouse, every chair taken, county inspector in the front row, even a local journalist taking notes. I projected photos of Kara's fake security operation, laid out the violations, handed out copies of every fraudulent letter. When Kara tried to defend herself, spouting off about community safety and order, it backfired spectacularly. Parents shouted her down. George, who never raises his voice, bellowed. We don't need a dictator policing our lives. The inspector wrote up an official order. Tear it all down, immediately. Watching the work crews dismantle her little empire, watching neighbors clap and cheer in the street, you'd think that'd be the end. But nah, not with someone like Kara. The next week, a flatbed showed up at her house, loaded with bricks, rebar, and jackhammers. County enforcement had forced her to demolish her illegal driveway extension, for real this time, at her expense. The sound of those jackhammers echoed down the street, every strike a little bit of payback for years of petty tyranny. Even Ben, her husband, just stood in the doorway, looking, well, honestly, like a guy who'd finally been set free. You want to know what poetic justice feels like? It's sipping coffee on your porch, watching the blue front door Kara tried so hard to outlaw glow in the sunrise, while across the street, the queen of the HOA has to eat the cost of her own arrogance. George walked by that morning, his dog sniffing at the dirt. He smiled, nodded, and said, justice is a beautiful thing. And yeah, I agreed. Sometimes it takes forever, but it does come around. But here's the part nobody talks about, the thing that lingers long after the fights are over. People like Kara, they don't disappear. They plot. They hide. They look for the next angle. I still catch her watching from behind the blinds. Notebook at the ready, eyes sharp as ever. Neighbors ask if it's really over, and I just shrug. With people like her, there's always another round, waiting in the wings. And maybe that's the lesson. Community isn't just about fighting the bullies, or rewriting the rules, or even winning the big battles. It's about staying vigilant, helping each other, standing up for what's fair when it matters most. It's about realizing that respect isn't given by an HOA board or some set of bylaws. It's earned, neighbor by neighbor, every single day. So if you've ever faced your own Kara, or maybe you're in the middle of it right now, remember, you don't have to fight alone. Sometimes all it takes is one person willing to shine a light, to say enough, and the whole block wakes up. Drop a comment below, share your story, tell me what you'd do next, because honestly, something tells me I'm not the only one still watching those blinds. And hey, if you want to know what Kara's got up her sleeve next, stick around. In neighborhoods like this, the drama never really ends. It just waits for the next chapter.